For years, OnePlus and its fanboys have been scoffing at Apple and Samsung for their overpriced, expensive flagship phones. But today, that same brand is making expensive, overpriced flagship phones. So the question is, has this company done enough to make their flagship killer phones into a true blue flagship that can compete with the best of the best? So the OnePlus 8 Pro costs $900 to start and $1,000 to top off. And that is a very expensive phone. With tax, this is a $1,000 phone, even if you get the base variant. So a $1,000 phone, let's talk about the build quality. The first thing that most people will feel, touch, and really get to judge the phone on, and I'm glad to say this is one place where OnePlus does not skimp at all. Build quality is fantastic. The material used are great. The design is good. And just overall, you know, the color, the finish, the everything, fit and finish is perfect. There's nothing I can complain about here. But there is one thing I can complain about, one of their main design choices, and that is this camera bump. So on camera, it doesn't look that big, but I assure you, this is a massive camera bump and it interferes every time. So naturally you want to hold the phone like this with your index finger somewhere in this range. And the problem is with this bump being so big, you always brush up against the camera. And when you set it down on a table, I'm not joking, it looks like a ramp. It is like elevated. Every time I see it, I make fun of it. I'm like, haha, look at that. It's a ramp. It's ready for someone to take right off of it. But yeah, this camera bump is big. And when you're using it on a desk, it definitely starts to wobble around and move the phone around. So that's a little bit annoying. The button placement is kind of weird to me. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but I think it's not logical. So the power button is on the right side and above it is the alert slider. On the left side is the volume rocker, up and down. So what doesn't sit right with me is, why is the alert slider that is basically handling all your phone's volume and everything, why is it next to the power button and not next to the volume button? This doesn't make sense to me. It would have made more sense if it was switched around. That's what Apple does. They're the only other phones I know that actually have a physical alert slider of any form. So they have it right above their volume. So it would have made sense to me if the alert slider was closer to the volume instead of the power button. And talking about that slider alert button, this is the first time I've had a OnePlus with this slider button that causes issues. So what happens is, because of the way this is designed, I'm not using this phone with a case. So whenever I put it in my pocket or pull it out, it's just the alert slider gets caught on my jeans and keeps changing the slider around. So if I leave it in silent, it somehow goes to ring. If I leave it on ring, it goes to silent. And I've missed so many calls with it. It's weird. I don't know why it's happening with this phone. I've used OnePlus phone for years and all of them had the alert slider, but this is the first one where the alert slider just keeps moving around on me when I put it in and out of my pocket. Let's talk about that color, glacial green. So this is one of the 3 color options you have. There's black, ultramarine blue, and glacial green. So this glacial green is actually a lot more teal or cyan than a green. In most lights, it looks absolutely blue. So even right now when you look at it, it's way more blue than green. It's a good color choice. I don't know. I mean, OnePlus has always done more interesting and unique colors. They don't really go with the same flow, but yeah, it does have a matte back finishing. So it's a matte glass on the back, which is nice, but also not nice because it's not easy to see as many fingerprints, but once they get on there, it's really a lot harder to clean. So it's a give and a take. That's just a drawback of matte glass finishes in general. That's not targeted toward the OnePlus in any way. One more thing I did notice, when you pull it out of the box, the one place where fit and finish, where that attention to detail was missing, was the pre-installed screen protector. So this phone, it's a curved display, so it comes with a pre-installed screen protector on the front. And the issue was this time around, I've never had this before on any phone, let alone a very expensive phone, is that the pre-applied screen protector already had bubbles and was peeling off on the sides when I pulled it out of the box when I was doing the unboxing. If you watched my unboxing video, you would have saw that as well. I mentioned it on there, and it lasted maybe a couple of hours before it started to come up even more and more, and eventually after a day or so, I just completely got rid of it because there was no way I was rocking that. It just kept getting caught in my hand. It just kept peeling more and more, so I just completely got rid of it. So that was one of the things I noticed, but otherwise, build quality is fantastic. Moving on, let's talk about the display. That's really the first thing you interact with. That's the first thing you see. And this has got a beautiful 120 Hertz Quad HD display, and you can use both simultaneously, which you cannot do on any other, flagship phone right now. Besides the gaming phones, which those aren't as popular. So I'm not gonna really assume that. So the big flagships that are out there, the Pixel, the iPhone, the Samsungs, and the OnePlus, this is the one that is the only one right now that can do Quad HD with 120 hertz. And that's including the brand new Note 20 Ultra that came out months after this phone. So I don't know what Samsung's up to there. Now, aspect ratio is a little bit weird. This is a very tall display, and it's a headache, right? I don't like the tall display. It's very unusual in certain apps, and there's apps that just absolutely don't update for support on a lot of Android. So one of those apps is Hulu. So for those of you who don't know Hulu is a streaming service in the US, and I use it a lot to watch TV shows. And the problem is Hulu doesn't zoom in. It doesn't allow you to zoom in on Android at all. And it also blocks out the part of the notch. So what happens is you're left with a huge black bars on both sides, and you can't do anything about it. And on top of it, it's not centered also because it's ignoring the top, the notch, right? So the display just becomes all wonky. You guys will see on this clip I include, it's just not nice. The punch hole camera, I don't like this. I've complained about it nonstop. I'm not a fan of it. I honestly wish they would have stuck with the pop-up camera, but I understand why they got rid of it, but I personally preferred it that way. The display, there was a lot of brightness issues before I even got the phone on my hand. There were people complaining about it. Personally, I didn't notice it too much. The only critique I have is it doesn't get dim enough for me. I like my display to be really low. I get migraines a lot, and when that happens, I get sensitivity to light. So I want my display to be very dark, and it doesn't get dark enough for my taste. I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue for many people, but it is something to consider. It doesn't have the full range as many other smartphones have, and we're kind of used to now. And of course the quality, the clarity, everything is awesome on this. The color is definitely a little bit oversaturated. They're punchier than they are in real life. I mean, a lot of people like that. I too prefer it. It looks good, but what it does is it does kind of distort reality, especially I noticed in the camera app. When you're looking at it, when you take a picture and you look at it on this display and then you actually look at it on your computer or something, it's a huge margin. And that's something that, is a little bit something I don't know if I want to say it's something I hold against the phone, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. And the one thing I will hold against this phone, and basically every phone that comes with an edge display, a curved display on the front, I hate it. And the biggest reason is so many false touches, so many, whenever you're using the phone, because of the way the glass is, the way you rest your hand on it, you're gonna be touching the screen. And I get so many phones. This is not a daily thing. This is an hourly thing. Every hour when I'm using the phone, at least 2 to 3 times, I will, end up I'm trying to scroll and it's not scrolling. I'm like, what's wrong? Is the app frozen or something? And then I realize it's because the way I'm holding my finger on the side of the display, it thinks I'm holding it down and it won't let me scroll. It's a huge thing. I'm sorry for going on that very super fast rant there, but the palm rejection and the rejections on the edges are horrible, and they really detract from the experience. Not to mention, because of the way this display is made, it's just so tall. It's really hard to get to the top, and when you want to get to the top, you end up gripping the edges harder, and that just causes more false touches, and then it's a whole thing. And talking about that tall display, we have to talk about the fact that there are no reachability features. So this is a very tall display, and if you want to get to the top, the way it sits, I can't get even to the 3/4 point with my thumb, and I have pretty large hands, I'd say. So, you always have to do that shuffle, that dance with your hands to get up to the top. And there's absolutely not a single feature built into Oxygen OS to make this easier on you. There's no, double tap somewhere to bring down the screen, or something that Apple does and so many other Android manufacturers have done baked into their OSs, so that reachability is a little bit easier. It's just not there. Finally, with the display, the last thing I want to talk about is the under-display fingerprint scanner. Now, I've complained about this a lot. I'm not a fan of them, but on this one, there's a large improvement from the previous versions of it. I don't think OnePlus explicitly stated anything that's different, but it works a lot better. It works a lot more reliably. I used to have daily issues, like daily recognition failures. It would just repeatedly not work on a day-to-day basis, but now it's become more every week or two, or every couple days, once or twice, it will not let me in because it doesn't recognize it's my fingerprint. But for the most part, it's, you know, they've sorted out the kinks, and this is probably, I think, as best as an optical sensor will get. Moving on, let's talk about the battery. So this has a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, pretty big, and it does help. So this does have that 120 hertz display, and it can run at QHD. So I do run it at 120 plus QHD. So that's a very demanding thing on a battery. And for the most part, it handles it really well. I get somewhere from about 6 to 8 hours of screen on time, most charges. And that's good for me most days. That gets me through an entire day on most days. But there are days where you have to charge it back up. So it's not 100% foolproof. And as the battery ages, it's just going to get worse. But I think with the amount of stuff it's handling, I think it's a respectable number. Not close to my iPhone 11 Pro, but that's not running such a ridiculous display. So I get it. The thing that I do feel the most annoyed about is that the battery life is not consistent. So with my iPhone, battery life is very consistent. Almost every day I notice I end about right around the same percentages with the same screen on time. With this, while my because I was a little busy, the last couple of weeks have been different. My schedule's been weird, but my screen on time has varied, but a lot of times the charge percentages vary too, so vastly. So just a week or so ago, if you follow me on Twitter, by the way, I post these updates every day of when I charge and when, what the percentage and everything is. So if you want to check me out, be sure to check me out over on Twitter. So, just 2 similar days. I ended the battery at 40%. I used 60% of the battery in that day. Going to bed, I had 40 left, and one day I had under 2 hours of screen on time on the battery, and another day got me way over 4 hours. So the consistency of battery life is not there. I don't know who to blame it on. I don't know if it's the hardware, if it's the software, but something's up, and the battery life is not as consistent as I'd hoped. But overall, this is not going to be an issue at all for your average user. For average users, you're not going to be as power intensive as me. I think most people, I'd say 90-95% of people will get through a full day without any issues on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, moving on, let's talk about the speakers. It has dual stereo speakers, one at the bottom, one up at the earpiece. It's good quality, but it's not as high quality as the iPhone or Pixel. The one thing it does have to its advantages, it gets louder than the iPhone and the Pixel, but once you get very loud at the top of the volume range, it does start to lose quality as you get further and further up, which makes sense, but I think that it could have been done better. But no real complaints on this. The audio quality was fine, and call quality was the same. Whenever I took calls on the phone, I never had an issue with call quality, both on speaker or the normal earpiece mode. The earpiece gets more than loud enough, and it was absolutely fine. Moving on, let's talk about performance. So performance is OnePlus's game. That's where they dominate, and this phone is no different. This has the Snapdragon 865, and it's honestly a benchmark. This is the benchmark Android performer until the 865 came out. 865 Plus came out, I'm sorry. But yes, this is the performance on this, no issues whatsoever. Everything about it works just as advertised. No overheating issues. The only time you'd see overheating is when you're doing a lot of multitasking with things running in the background. That's when it starts to heat up, but I'd say that's very normal. There was nothing unusual about the way this phone heats up. And RAM management, I have to commend OnePlus on this. Their RAM management is excellent. I'd say the best in Android I think I've ever used with Samsung, Pixel, and every other phone I've used. OnePlus does great stuff with their optimization on software, and RAM management is one of them. I would be surprised at some of the apps that were still open, sometimes used hours ago. So absolutely impressed with performance on this phone. Moving on, let's talk about software. Software is a little bit bumpy. So certain apps, and this is an Android issue, this is not a OnePlus issue. There are certain apps, even though this has an amazing chipset and everything, they stutter, they have lags, they crash on me all the time, and that's optimization. That's where you don't get that as smooth experience as you get over on the iOS side of things. And these are not like small random apps. I'm talking apps like Reddit. Those that have huge development teams and that have been around for years. Those apps too, have issues. They stutter. There's times where the app will just basically crash on me. There's just the app quality is not consistent when you look at Android right now. And I think that a lot of that has to go with how different every phone is, the different features, the size of everything. It just kind of makes it hard to optimize. Oxygen OS is very familiar. It's got all the usual built-in stuff. The one thing that I don't like now is that it's getting overbearing. They have forcibly installed apps like Netflix, Facebook. They're starting to get in on the bloatware game, and I'm not liking it. You can't uninstall Netflix, by the way, which is stupid. It did go from the weird thing with OnePlus is it went from being a stock Android with a few tasteful modifications on top to basically becoming a full-blown skin. Now, you can't call this stock Android with a few extra features anymore. This is a full-blown skin and very, very different from what the stock Android experience is. And I think the most disappointing part is security updates. So this phone, OnePlus used to pride themselves on being, one of the best with updates all across the board. They give feature updates to even a lot of older phones and all that, but this phone is, recently things have just changed. I got it in July. It came with the July security update. As I'm filming this is August 19th, and this is still on the July update. I haven't gotten a security update 20 months into this month, and that's stupid. Like, this is your flagship phone, the most expensive one you sell. How can you not push out the software update, a security update of all things? I'm not liking that. That's something that I've noticed. The same thing with my OnePlus Nord. I have that as well. I bought it, it only went on sale August 6th of this month, and still it's running the July update. And I've gotten 2 software updates on that, and neither of them updated the security on the Android app. So it's just so weird to me. And just the software is somewhere where OnePlus is kind of falling behind now. And finally, let's move on to the home stretch, the camera. So the camera is, it's mediocre. That's what I can say. This is not a camera I'd want to see on a $900 to $1,000 phone. It just does not justify it in any way. The rear camera setup is just mediocre. You got a 48 megapixel normal, the wide angle, 48 megapixel ultra wide, 8 megapixel portrait, and then a 5 megapixel. It's not the portrait, the 8 megapixel telephoto, and then you got the 5 megapixel color filter camera, which is basically just a marketing tool. It's not really anything that you'll ever use or see practical use cases for. It's stupid. The colors on this phone are definitely a little bit more punchy. They're not true to life like the iPhone is or the Pixel is. Even the Pixel I'd say is lightly on the punchier side, but this one is a little bit even higher than that. The images are punchy, so when you see it on screen, it looks different, and then when you see it in person, it looks different. So there's a little bit of a gap there. Macro mode is okay, as again, it's just one of those features that doesn't have too many use cases for me. I did test it out. When you switch to the actual macro mode, things get worse in the quality. You can see there's a one point where you can get close enough to the thing before macro mode is turned on, and that's where things are the sweetest, and that's a sweet spot in my opinion. The main camera, this is a big issue, and I've never seen this on any phone that I've used, any camera I've used in the recent, I'd say 5, 6, or 7. I don't even remember. This is the first time I'm having this issue, and that is that images are distorted. The center is in focus, but the top, bottom, and sides are distorted. So here's an example. Look at this screen grab of Twitter open on my laptop. On the left side is my OnePlus, and if you guys look, the tweet, Casey Neistat's tweet, is so much more blurry than it is on the iPhone side. Same with, just look at the left, right, and bottom parts. It's huge. It's a huge issue. This distortion is very apparent, and I've noticed it constantly. And this is not just one photo I've seen it on. It is multiple times. It's so bad to the point that I don't use this camera for certain situations because of how distorted it gets. That's a big issue. But besides that, in outdoor settings, it's not as apparent, and it just kind of works through it. The 3x zoom is really nice. The quality is excellent. It's so much better than 2x. I didn't even realize it, but 3x zoom is a lot more useful than 2x is. It's just, it goes in that extra bit that you want it to. And then, the ultra wide, that's, again, it doesn't look too good. It doesn't get the detail you want it. It's too soft of an image, and I would have preferred if OnePlus ditched that color filter camera and put the extra money into a better ultra wide sensor. Another really bizarre thing, when you take video, you are still limited to 5 minutes of recording on 4K 60 frames per second. That is insane. The iPhone 8 from 2017 can do 4K 60 FPS, unlimited, no time restrictions. It makes no sense to me why a flagship $1,000 phone from 2020 cannot do that. It blows my mind. It goes to show some places are so neglected. And for somebody like me who takes a lot of video, even more than photos, that's such an important aspect they're missing out on. So by the way, as I'm talking about video samples, here are 2 clips of video so you guys can decide what the video looks like for yourself. And just let me know what you guys think down in the comments below about it. Alright guys, this is the rear camera of the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, I do want to say that right off, they give you a warning when you start off video on 4K 60 FPS that it is limited to 5 minutes. So that sucks. The iPhone does not do that, but many Androids, including this OnePlus 8, do that. So, that being said, this is the ultra wide angle camera. I'm going to switch over to the wide. It does allow you to switch while you are recording. So, looks fantastic. HDR struggles a little bit in video. Right now it's just blowing everything out, but for the most part it looks really good. The stabilization, I'm not sure. Tell me what you guys think. I'm walking around. This is the 3x zoom. The stabilization on this looks horrible in my initial thing, but let's see. Alright, that's 1x. That's the normal wide angle. I'm going to get really close up, see what it looks like. So, you know, focus and everything seems to be doing just fine, not having any issues. And the 3 modes really does help because you get to quickly switch between stuff and not have to worry about it. But yeah, the 3x definitely seems to be just all over the place when it comes to stabilization, at least on my phone. So, that's the rear camera of the OnePlus 8 Pro, 4K 60 FPS. Let me know what you guys think about the quality. Hey guys, this is the OnePlus 8 Pro's front camera taking video. I have it at 4K 60 FPS. This video is 1080 FPS, but I just took it in 4K just so you guys could see the highest quality there is. You know, it looks pretty good on the screen, but again, the display is so over punchy that I won't know the real colors until I see it on my computer. But let me know what the audio sounds like and everything else. But this is the front camera at 4K 60 FPS. So that was the video camera sample on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Let's talk about the front camera before I wrap up the camera segment. The front camera is a single 16 megapixel shooter. It's okay. You know, it's too soft. I don't think the detail is there. It's not as wide angled as the iPhone and Pixel are. They both have single front cameras too, but their field of view, is so much wider. This is just not as much. As I said, in low light especially, there is so much missing in terms of detail. The images are so soft and they don't look good. The color as well on the front camera especially, way cooler. You know, it's not true to life. I'll throw up a photo here of the iPhone 11 Pro and the OnePlus 8 Pro. You guys can see the Pro is very real to life. If you saw that and you saw me in person, that's very accurate, but this one is very far off, and you guys can see. And portrait mode as well. You know, it's a feature that exists, but it's really not as good. I think that the results from the Pixel and the iPhone are way better. And the one thing I did notice is when you do take portrait mode shots, the first try never comes out good. You have to take 2 to 3 shots before you get a good result on the front camera. So with all that said and done, the final verdict on this phone, and you know, it's just something I have to say, this is not very different from OnePlus phones of past. OnePlus has always been very generous with the hardware. They're always punching above their weight class. You know, and that was back when they were way undercutting the other brands. But now it's not the same thing. You know, they're not undercutting brands anymore. They're right up there with those other brands. And it's hard to start justifying it now because they are still making the same cuts that they did. The camera is the main one. So this is not a $1,000 camera. This phone just isn't. So who do I think this phone is for? This phone isn't for everybody. I think that the market for this phone has gotten a lot smaller. The 8 Pro in specific is for Android lovers that really want the best Android performance with a light skin. They don't want crazy skins that, you know, a lot of the gaming phones come with, or a lot of the, Chinese OEMs come with, you know, like Xiaomi. They have those really heavy skins, Oppo. They've all got those big heavy skins that this one doesn't. You know, it's still got a skin for sure, but it's not as intrusive or it doesn't feel as heavy as those. So I think that's who this is targeted towards, you know, Android fans who really want the best performance with a light skin. Otherwise, really, you could get better options. I would personally prefer an iPhone 11 or a discounted Galaxy S20. I've seen those go for $800 very regularly. So at $800, you know, if I was contemplating that price point, I would probably go with one of those two instead of this, even if this was cheaper. So that's where it comes to, right? This just isn't that complete package. So when it wasn't, you know, a flagship priced phone, I could let it go. But now that it is, I can't let it go. And that's gonna be it for this one, guys. It's just, I really wish I had better things to say. So this is a good phone, but I don't recommend buying it, especially since we all know in a couple of months the next version is gonna come out, and that's probably gonna be a little bit better, a little bit faster, all that wonderful stuff, but probably have a price bump too. So that's it for this one, guys. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more OnePlus content. I'm going to be testing out the OnePlus Nord next. So if you want some updates on that, be sure to follow. And if you haven't already, be sure to check me out on social media and my blog as well, right down here. I'll have all the usernames and everything right here and down in the description as well if you want to check those out. That's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.